Good evening. Calling to order a special meeting of the West Hartford Board of Education. Tonight on March 11th, 2026, we will be having a budget workshop part 1. So I will ask if Paul could call roll.
Ms. Bleich?
Present.
Mr. Goldman?
Here.
Mr. Gagnon?
Here.
Ms. Marimon?
Here,
Ms. Yageloff?
on her way.
Mr. Weiner, excuse me. Ms. Hertz?
Also on her way.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're very excited to dive in this evening. For those in the public, we received the full presentation of the superintendent's budget last week, and we've had some time to digest the full set of materials. And then we have 2-part workshop series, tonight being part 1, followed by a second workshop on March 25th, where we'll be able to break down into more detail each section of the budget and ask lots of great questions to make sure that we're fully understanding the context of the proposals that is before us, and that will inform our discussions and our follow-up in review of the approval of the budget, which will take place on March 31st, 2026. So I know that the team has a lot in store for us tonight, and we're really excited to dive in. So we will turn it over to Superintendent Vicinas and his team.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I will gladly invite my team to come forward while I provide you some introductory comments. The first thing that I would like to do is I would like to give a huge thanks and congratulations to Ms. Barb Rua, our Director of Finance, and the entirety of her team. The work, the hours that go into this are indescribable, and as is her dedication, and I thoroughly appreciate it. As much I do my team that's here to provide you with their insights and information in and around the pages. And I want to certainly acknowledge we have members of our administrative team here. Normally, as you mentioned, we packed the house at the budget presentation, but the weather was a little uncooperative when we did that, and I'm very grateful for the folks here in the audience to hear this first workshop. With that, I want to give you guys a little bit of a orientation of some of the materials as we go through them in earnest. I know that you've had time to review them and look them over. And further, I'm aware that, you know, one of the key things that we've prepared for you for the purposes of this workshop is a little packet that Barb passed out to you that that the members at the table will be referencing, just kind of as a shortcut guide to help bring you through each of the comprehensive sections of the budget book. Before we do that, I'm going to ask if within your budget book you should be able to find, and what is also posted online, is the executive summary should be on the inside jacket of your board book, the executive summary. And you know, there's a lot of good information there, and I want to just take a couple of moments to highlight and set the context for what we'll be presenting tonight in great detail. So, as you know, you received my recommendation on the budget the other day, which was a budget of $228 million. That does represent roughly a $14.15 million increase, or 6.6%. And as I've shared, that budget this budget proposal is essentially a maintenance budget, but it does have drivers that we've talked about that I want to just pay a little attention to here at the beginning. Overall, I did want to point out, as is outlined, I'm kind of on page 2 of the executive summary, just kind of skimming some of the highlights for you. The overall budget reflects a net reduction of 2.6 positions from current staffing. So we're pretty level set staffed. It's a modest reduction. It's not very much. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we're down, I believe it's 20 positions over the last 2 years based on decreased enrollments. And enrollments, by and large, are generally flat, although there are some changes as we look. We understand that the salary increase is driven largely through salaries and benefits, and we'll talk more about that. Transportation, tuition, and utilities also represent an increase of about 4.9%, although tuition, we're glad to say, remains level funded. And you'll hear tonight about those efforts, we'll be able to point to what those numbers look like. But the ability for us to level fund tuition is really a reflection of Melissa and her team's effort to bring back students to the district at a cost savings, offset by those increasing costs that we see with tuition and certainly our projections on our state reimbursement. The remainder of the district's expenses really come under other expenses, and I know, Miriam, you had asked about that last time. I should have just referenced you to this paragraph at the time. The other expenses, and this, if you flip your cheat sheet open to the first page, you have a nice color graphic of a pie chart. That other expenses is that 2.5%. It consists of items such as instructional supplies, professional services, copier rentals, textbooks, technology, maintenance, custodial supplies, maintenance supplies, general insurance, and then rent for off-site facilities that we may use. As you know, this budget maintains class size guidelines where they are. We've had some of that conversation before. We have pictures of what our projections look like. I went through in my presentation to you last time all of the major increases. There are some, we do have a reduction in our pension expense. And when you do think about my recommended changes, there is a slight decrease based on enrollment changes, which will reflect a net reduction in positions. In general education, there are offsets. We do know we have increases within our special education. We have some non-classroom changes, such as the increase, just to highlight some of the things we talked about last time. I'm suggesting increasing our middle school counseling by a half position to support behavioral health at that school, and I'm suggesting a programmatic change, which is generally cost neutral for a change in supervision of our ESOL programming. So I just wanted to remind you of all of that, but in that executive summary, if you turn all the way to page 7, what may be helpful if you hadn't noticed it, is you do have that account listing. And so it identifies all of the different accounting codes that you see in the big budget book, alongside their titles, but sometimes the titles aren't enough to really clue you in as to what does that really mean. So there is a short description of each of those categories. And some of those, those budget codes are the same across all the sections. So sometimes there might be a slight difference in what that means or what that looks like at an elementary level versus at district-wide supervision. So if you have those questions this evening, we certainly encourage you to ask them. But I wanted to make sure that you had seen and spend some time with that executive summary. Otherwise, what we'll be doing in your packet is we have basically a formatted way to try to go through all of the different sections in the book. And to remind you, section D, as in Delta, that's regular education. So that's all of our general education, our elementary classrooms, our middle school and high school course offerings, as broken out by academic departments. And then it gets into kind of district-wide services, our school counseling, our gifted and talented, our supervision of instruction, all within that section. Then you go into section F, which is pupil services, our specialized instruction. So that's where you'll really hear Melissa's voice talking about what special education programming looks like across the district. It's also be the place where we talk about out-of-district tuition and any of those pieces. Then we'll get to section F, which are general support services, and you'll probably hear a little bit more of Julio's voice there as you kind of talk about a lot of whether it's custodians, plant services, also things like general insurance, our human resources department, basically the skeletal structure that helps the district to run. They will go through in your cheat sheet pages. They will go through first a description of how staffing has changed. And there's two parts to that. We'll talk about what you adopted last year versus what we enacted based on, any shifting needs from March until September. And then we'll talk obviously about what the changes are as it relates to the proposed budget. The program changes that are the rationale, or perhaps just the curious nature of what some of the programmatic changes are, will then be described. And then finally, we'll discuss kind of the dollars and cents of it. So each one of members of my team will take a turn describing each of those three things, and then we'll remain on that page and offer the opportunity for you to ask any questions that you have about that topic. So all I'd really ask, it won't take them very long to provide the highlights and any context to kind of bring the words off of the page to make it, hopefully be as clear as possible, and then the ability to ask questions. Within that, at the top of each of the pages in this handout are the very specific summary pages from the board book to reference. And I imagine, as I've seen this play out in the past, your questions will sometimes cause us to dig into that and say, well, let's take a closer look at that on page D17 or what have you. All right. Any questions before we begin? All right. With that, then, I'll just provide this last comment. Similar to how the graphic, I guess for you, it's a big blue, mostly blue pie because we are a people organization and 82% of our expenses are under people. About 82% of what you're about to hear is going to go through all of the different people in the organization in tabs D and E. And then those remaining little slivers at the end are pretty much the last pages in this handout, where you'll get to hear a lot about that because the majority of those items fall under Section F for General Support Services. So I will turn it over to the team, and I believe Mr. Duarte is going to lead us with the staffing changes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So as we review the various summary pages of the budget tonight, as Supervisor Sinas has previously mentioned, I want to continue emphasizing that every decision reflected in this budget is guided by our unwavering commitment to every child every day. It is often said that the best way to understand an organization's values is to look at its budget. And so a budget is more than just numbers. It's a reflection of our priorities and actions. I believe this budget represents a thoughtful investment in programs, resources, and personnel that directly support student learning and work to ensure that each child in our district has the opportunities, support, and environment they need to thrive. So with that said, as Superintendent Vice Sinas mentioned, I will do my best to try to remember every time to tell you which page it is in your binder, and I will also try to reference the page on the bottom of the packet. So if I forget to do that, I'm sure my friend Barb will remind me. So on page 2 of the packet here, and it reflects pages D4 and D5 of your binder. I'll start by saying, as you recall, we had an increase in elementary staffing by 6 teachers, and that was in response to actual student enrollment as well as aligning with our class guidelines. We are proposing to maintain the staffing level for the 26-27 school year. There were minor adjustments in art, physical education, and world language staffing, which resulted in a modest budgetary savings. And in the last, you'll see a transition from early intervention line that shifted over to literacy specialists. I know that Ann will speak in greater depth about these, but ultimately that resulted in FTE, essentially of a neutral FTE standpoint.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Barb. So starting with the teachers, to go in a little bit more depth there, last year's adopted budget included 196 elementary classroom teachers. However, following the budget adoption, the administration monitored enrollments closely during the summer of 2025, and due to some increases in registrations in these months, we proactively added 6 positions to address the growth in specific buildings. This brought our actual operating total to 202 classroom teachers, and we propose to keep that level for this year based on the projections that we're seeing. The strategic shift in literacy specialists was a decision that we are transitioning our early elementary, or early interventionist teachers, 2 literacy specialists, so you'll see a negative 10 positions in early intervention, but you'll see an additional 10 positions in literacy specialists. And this was a strategic reallocation of resources designed to provide high-level expertise across our district. We have the staffing allocations of 2 literacy specialists in each one of our, so the total would be 21, and we have 2 literacy specialists in each of our elementary schools, with 1 in our smallest elementary school. They have a great impact as they serve over 530 students in Tier 1 and in Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading support. So these are students who are struggling to be on grade level with reading. Tier 2 students are pulled from class, or a part of their day. I shouldn't say it's always class. Everything's class in elementary school, but they meet in small group with a literacy specialist who provides specific instruction to address one of their learning needs. A Tier 3 student is a student who has greater needs and would see that person a little bit more frequently per week and in a smaller group. So the difference between a Tier 2 and a Tier 3 student is the Tier 2 needs are a little bit less significant. They still meet with literacy specialists more than weekly, but their group may be a little larger and their strategies might be they're different. And the Tier 3 students, a little bit more significant need, smaller group, more frequently. So that's one of the biggest roles these people play. They give direct instruction to students, but beyond that, they also partner with classroom teachers because students are learning reading in class. And they partner with the classroom teachers to implement the most effective literacy strategies and to make sure that what they do in intervention and in classroom is not dramatically different, so the children see the connection. They also assist the principals in developing professional development for the teachers during CSI sessions, and they interface with parents as well to help the parents understand the students' growth. They also help the parents to offer strategies to support the reinforcement of critical literacy habits at home and in other parts of their day, this summer, and what have you. These are crucially important people. Currently, they're serving 530 students, but they have, in past years, they have served close to 700 students, depending on the year. We've also seen last year, we don't have the exit numbers yet this year because the year's not over, but last year we saw over 175 exits from tiered intervention, which is a real proof point that we are able to intervene at the earliest times and get students back towards grade level work, which is so crucial as they go to the middle school, upper elementary, and then middle school, where they're really reading to learn. We have another slight adjustment that we made beginning last year. We made a targeted adjustment to the world language approach at Charter Oak International Academy. After a careful review of student learning needs and consultation with the school administration, we have been phasing out the Mandarin program in the earliest grades to focus on a single world language. And the decision was driven by the linguistic profiles of the students. For instance, there's a significant number of our students at Charter Oak with a home language that is not English, is not Spanish, and is not Mandarin. So to come to school and to be learning English, but also be presented with Spanish and Mandarin and your home language seem to have a little bit of cognitive overload for many students. So this is going to allow us to focus. It will still meet the IB requirements. It will still be rich. It will still start in pre-K, but it will not be two language, which we noticed as the profile of our learner has changed, was quite a bit for our students to navigate. We will continue to look at this phase out in the upper grades to see if it is also necessary there, but it is phased out right now at K3, and we're looking at the phase out for 4 or 5. And so that's the slight adjustment in world language. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Barb to talk about the budget implications.
Thanks. When we look at the financials below that support the programs that Ann just discussed, you'll see that salaries increase, and that's consistent with the additional classroom staff that we have this year and are expecting to have next year. In addition, it reflects any collective bargaining agreement adjustments that would be required. When you look at the operating budget supporting this program, you do see a 1.4% increase. The major drivers in operating expense at the elementary level are departmental instructional supplies, that's 63%. Library books reflect 18% of that, software 13%, and textbooks 6%. As you can see, the equipment budget is unchanged.
Pending questions?
I
Yep.
think, so the plan is to go through one page at a time and ask questions, so we're done with that page. So any questions? Ethan?
On page D4, it has paraprofessional salaries. Which of these positions are paraprofessional? Sorry.
The paraprofessional salaries are reflected on D4, and they're under each subset of elementary, middle, and high school. However, they are accounted for in total in one location, which is page D81. And
They're not
so
part of D5?
they are not on D5. And so they're accounted in total for all paraprofessionals, elementary, middle, and
What
high.
page?
But their dollars are included here.
No, I got that. 81? I was just trying to put it together with what's paraprofessional, what's teacher.
So they're not included in this FTE headcount.
So
I can also, if you have curiosity, it might be helpful if you look in your data supplement. The data supplement, I think, is the last section of your book. And there's a paraprofessional staffing page on page 16 of the data supplement. It might be helpful, since you're going to be flipping through D and E and F, if maybe if you guys want to pull out the data supplement and have it on the side, because there could be opportunities to be referencing that throughout the evening, I would
so
imagine.
which one, D81 or data
So
supplement?
D81 is going to have your dollar values in your short summary. Page 16, if you have specific interest, more detailed questions about how the pairs play out across this building or that building, and or what their classifications are, that information will be on page in the data supplement.
And so you can see at the elementary level, there is an anticipated, the positions are at the top section, and you can see how they break out, and the majority are instructional in nature.
This page 81? No.
So 16 of the data supplement.
Okay, where in I see general fund positions.
Yes.
Oh, everybody there is? Okay, so, wait, I'm just trying to understand. When I look at page 5, that doesn't include the paraprofessionals, or it does, and they
The d-
just merge together?
This is sort of a unique position in the way that it's categorized in the book. The dollars are truly in the elementary section, and you see those on D5.
Yep.
However, the FTE headcount is on another page in the book.
Okay,
But otherwise, they are on it's a one-to-one.
all right, I guess I'll have to figure it out. All right, thank you.
Mary?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am curious about the literacy specialist line. So 2 per elementary, serving over 500 kids, sounds like a lot. So I'm just wondering if you could shed some light on what that structure looks like and what caseload looks like for the literacy specialists and anybody who might be supporting them, what their qualifications are. In other words, are they teachers? Are they reading specialists? And do we have specialized literacy specialists for, any number of, reading or learning disabilities?
So let me make sure I answer every question. First, these people are teachers, certified teachers, and they all have backgrounds in reading. So they have reading certifications. It is a high number, but sometimes students also leave intervention during the year. So although they don't have 531 at all times of the 21 people. And we also have a series of people who are grant funded who can assist, like tutors. So those tutors also help serve these children. Some schools have some tutors if they're larger and they have a higher caseload. Some schools do not have the tutors because they might have a lower caseload, or they're a smaller school, or both. So the students are assessed. We have a number of assessments that help us determine the reading needs. And students who are in need of intervention, it's worked into their schedule. And these teachers pull these students in small group, either sometimes in a tier 3, maybe 2 or 3 students at a time, and sometimes maybe in a tier 2, more like 5 or 6 students, all different, depending on the school, depending on the need, depending on the schedule, the grade level, lots of factors. But there are 2 people per school. As I say, in the larger school, they may be supplemented by title-funded tutors. And they work with the students to progress monitor their improvements in reading. And students do exit, which is a beautiful thing. Some students also go from a tier 3 to a tier 2, and that is, they're seen less often. So the tier 2 students may be seen twice a week, where the tier 3 students might be seen 3 or 4 times a week in small group. And again, the more intensive the tier, the more intensive, the smaller the size and the longer the intervention. So I hope that answered some of your question. It is quite a bit. It is a whole process in our office to manage students who need intervention, who's seeing whom, are they getting the supports they need, and who's exiting to make sure the program is effective. That's really important to us. We've seen a good, strong number of exits within a year, sometimes within 2 years, because it's so very important to catch these reading deficiencies as early as possible. And you'll see this kind of a structure in elementary where you wouldn't see the same type of structure in middle school. I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, and are there specialized literacy specialists for to address certain needs?
Well, they have training in certain programs. There's not necessarily, so somebody might have a specific kind of training in dyslexia or other things, and they would have certain programs they're using that is specialized that they might have gotten specialized training in. But our director of elementary, Melissa Behrens, does an exceptional job of being quite aware of what people need, and what trainings. They also bring ideas to us on important trainings, and Melissa's very attuned to the state advice and guidance on reading, which has taken front and center stage recently. So Melissa's been on all of those state calls to make sure that our program is meeting our students' needs. I'm very proud of the program. I think that the change was really helpful, and I'll give you an example of why, because you might say, well, the body count's the same, it's 21. It was 21, it is 21. Except by doing this, we were able to adjust the expectations of the role. The roles were very different, even though the body count was the same and numbers were the same. And the literacy specialists now really have a partner. For instance, before the early intervention, only worked with students, never worked with classroom teachers, did not work with the principal, did not support professional development. Now they have really co-equal positions, so they have a partner to go to and to problem solve, and they both have the experience of working with a classroom teacher who may be struggling with some intervention strategies during regular instruction. So we really believe the model is superior to where we are, and the beauty of it was it came in at an even, and for the budget, it was even, but we think it's strategically a very important change we made.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize one thing that Ann said, because she spent a lot of time describing the excellent work that the folks do, but at the root of your question, this is a separate certification that teachers get above and beyond their elementary cert. So they do come in, they are very highly qualified. It is the reading specialist certification that they have to get. We've called them literacy specialists, and to Ann's point, with the state's change with the science of reading, they have, under this, essentially this reclassification of the job descriptions that previously existed, they have direct services to students, as well as that very important professional development role with the teachers in the building to educate them in and around the science of reading. You may recall, or you may have heard, or you may not have ever heard about it, but the state previously was doing the survey every year to all of our elementary teachers about the depth of their knowledge relative to the science of reading before science of reading legislation came in. That was on the books, I don't even know, Ann, 5 years, 6 years, more than that. So these folks are the critical specialists to help develop, obviously, what we all know the most important skill for any child is to have mastery of the fundamentals of reading, certainly no later than second grade.
Thank you.
Ethan?
I apologize, but can we go back to the paraprofessionals? If I'm reading it right, it's 245, 240, on page 16. Is that all paraprofessionals, or is that another group?
So that grand total is going to be the paraprofessionals for regular education and special education.
Okay.
So the paraprofessionals we're speaking on now are the regular education paraprofessionals. So that would exclude those where it's in, do you see pupil services administration? We'd be excluding those paraprofessionals and the school administration paraprofessionals.
So how many would be in the regular?
So when we look at elementary schools specifically, we're looking at 54 paraprofessionals.
So there's, sorry, 284 or 285 for regular, and then another 54 paraprofessionals.
Yeah, if I
Can I
can,
say that correctly? So,
we're gonna break down, if I have it right, like you guys are on the first page, so we've just talked about elementary ed.
yeah,
So yeah, if you add them up on this page, you'll be able to capture the grand totals. But just for elementary, just to breathe more life in that, so if it'll help the understanding at all, you see on the top of page 16 that you essentially have clerical paras and instructional paras. So clerical paras generally are going to be working in the office. You see that we have 12 there. There's 11 elementary. One of our bigger elementaries has more than one. The instructional paras, a lot of the instructional paras are assigned in the primary grades, specifically in grade K, where we typically use a ratio of one para educator for every 2 elementary kindergarten sections, and those are the folks that can help go in as students are learning how to do school, learning the routines, and provide the teacher with assistance so that we can take classroom sections that may have upwards to 20 kindergartners in some cases and be able to break them out in small groups and be able to provide some instruction relative to the tasks that the teacher has orchestrated.
I'm just trying to get the number right now. That's all.
Okay, so
Just trying to understand.
yeah, 54 at the elementary, and what was the question on totals?
So that's plus 284 on page 5?
On page 5.
Budget 2027.
So on D5, those 285 board-funded positions exclude those paras in the head count.
Okay, so just add them together. So I'm good, thank you.
Miriam?
Thank you. Are math interventionists included in which category?
The certified math interventionists?
Yes, for elementary.
They are in the budget for my office, I believe. They're not here.
Okay.
We will come to them.
Yep, we'll be coming to them.
Okay.
We'll be coming to them, sorry. They are
Thank
not
you.
here. The literacy specialists are. They're housed in the buildings. So that would be a difference. The math interventionists move
Okay.
across buildings, and there's not nearly as many.
Yeah,
Okay.
just, and I'll
They're central.
pull the curtain back a little bit on some of the math. So at Smith STEM School, you're going to see when we get to that page, you're going to see a magnet teacher. At Smith STEM School, we have a math coach, not interventionist, math coach, who does work with intervention but works with teachers as well. And then we have another position that's district-wide that's employed in that way, as well as we have a curriculum specialist. So those 2 positions, the district-wide math coach and the district-wide math curriculum specialist, are in Council and Ann's office, so they're on a different page. And then at the secondary level, we have some math coaches, and so you'll see those when we get to the high school pages. So they are the way that, you got to choose a way that you're going to organize. So you can organize by content area, you can organize by grade level. And a long time ago, in a board far, far away, the decision was made to organize by level. And so sometimes some of these questions have to be answered, hey, the pair is here, or here, or here, and they're broken out across different sections. So I appreciate, it can be a lot to absorb, but if you keep levels in your head, hopefully that'll help.
Any other questions? I just had a real quick question about the classroom teacher in residence. Are they able to be a teacher of record and have their own classroom, or are they co-teaching with a teacher of record?
Want to talk about that? I know we got a lot of people that can answer that.
So it depends on where they're at. So again, remember, in that first year, they're not going to be a teacher of record. They're actually going to be sitting and observing for that first year. But we do have several folks that are actual teachers of record. Right now, I think we have 3. Is it right? I think two with yeah.
So it's a 2-year process. In the first
So
year,
there's only 2 here, so those are the 2 that are not yet. The new. Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you. Miriam?
And do we have an amount for the cost of those teachers in residence?
all numbers I point at Barb.
So we do remit a balance to CREC, who organizes the Teacher in Residence program, of approximately $10,000, and then the teachers in residence are paid $30,000. In addition, they're paid 2 stipends of $2,000 on each end of the school year.
By the district?
Yes,
Or is-
by,
okay.
by the district.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're good. Thank you.
All right, I will turn us to page 3 of the board packet, reflecting pages D20 and D21 of your board binder. So here you'll see a very modest change from the adopted budget to the current number, a 0.15 increase, and we anticipate maintaining that current level. The slight decrease is the result of scheduling efficiencies in our core academic classes, and you'll see a slight increase in the Unified Arts, and that was a result of student enrollment.
Thank you. So to add just a little more depth to that change, the driver of the change was enrollment trend on the north side of town at the time. You might recall, or you might not recall, but you might recall that King Philip, we expanded from 8.5 teams to 9 full teams, and with that came a corresponding adjustment in the Unified Arts that we had to adjust to make sure all the students were supported in Unified Arts. So it is just a slight adjustment of 0.35. So this year, we anticipate the same number of sections and teams at the middle school, 9 teams at Sedgwick, 9 full teams at King Philip, and Bristow runs on 1 team per grade, so 3 teams at Bristow. And for all of those students, of course, they also have their Unified Arts and they attend those classes. Teams are approximately 95 to about 105 students, depending on the school. And that was the change, to have the Unified Arts match the full teams instead of part teams.
And before you move on, I'm going to say one thing about enrollment numbers at the middle school. I was kind of looking at them. Last year, as you may recall, when we made this move to up to 9 full teams at the 2 bigger middle schools, we had some kind of untenable numbers. It was too big for a half team, and it was going to be a relatively small full team. We are seeing, if you look in your data supplement, you want to look at the projection enrollments. We are projecting increases in our middle school, but I want to provide you with confidence that we have room within the teams to be able to absorb those students, and it'll round out our average class sizes at the middle school to be more in keeping. They've been comfortable this year, and they'll be more in keeping what they've historically been.
Does would that mean possibly taking more students to, say, Bristow?
No, Bristow is a pretty static enrollment of what, 310 or so, Barb?
Yes,
Yeah.
we seek to enroll 105 in each new class.
Yeah, but I apologize. I cut off before Barb can go over the numbers, and then let me have her do the numbers, and then can throw in any questions.
So when we look at the financials, what you see here is the salary increases resulting from these teachers and then the library media specialists. Those are the 2 categories under salaries. And that's consistent with the individuals we have in the roles and where they are, and then collective bargaining adjustments from year to year. When we look at the operating budget, you'll see that departmental instructional supplies are 57% of this total. Textbooks are 8% of this total. Library books are 13%, and software is 6%. Equipment has just a minor adjustment looking into the next year.
Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate you going through this so thoroughly. Two questions for me on this page. The first is unified arts. I'm unfamiliar with what that means.
Thank you. So, our students are attending their core classes, English and math, social studies, science, and world language, but they also attend physical education, they attend health, they attend music, they attend art, and they attend a CTE class. So those 5 are the unified arts.
Got it. Thank you. And then I don't know if this is the appropriate place, but one thing I'm curious about with maybe the library media specialist, or maybe it's with the software purchases, is like some of the programs that schools buy, whether it's to support kids with reading or math, what have you, not like an app, but like an online thing. You know what I mean? Great. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm curious if it seems like sometimes that's purchased through a teacher directly, as opposed to like through the library. I'm just wondering if there's some sort of like aggregation of those purchases to get some cost savings.
Yes, certainly for any of the large programs, there's aggregation. If it's used town-wide, it appears in a different budget because we have adopted it town-wide in every school, and it really wouldn't be appropriate to sit in like a school budget. There's some flexibility at the school level for programs that the LMS or even a principal might want to try, and they get permission, of course, with IT for privacy and all of the matters that go along with that. But there's some flexibility for programs that are used in much smaller focus or pilots or something like that nature. Teachers sometimes try some of their own things, but again, they have to abide by Connecticut data privacy, and they have to check, work with our IT department and make sure they're all right. But any of the large purchases that are district-wide or even level-wide, like elementary, may not be a high school program, but it might be in all the elementaries, that's centralized.
And then I was going to just piggyback one comment that I don't know if it's every year, every 18 months or so, every once and again, our IT department will reach out to the curriculum office or to myself, and they have done an audit. Like if they're starting to see, hey, we're starting to get a number of requests for this particular software, they will then say, is this something that you want to put onto a district level for exactly that purpose? And at other times they'll say, hey, sometimes ask, hey, can you take a look at this? Is this something, even if it's only a small number of folks using it, is it something that we really want to be using? So there are those processes for kind of auditing the usage.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Mary?
Hi, thank you. Curious about the numbers. So it looks like in 5520 textbooks, or some of textbooks and workbooks, there was a decrease. And I'm just wondering what the review is for, periodicals, online software, things to keep track of kind of what's in, what's outdated, and what that process looks like to make sure that not only we're staying current, but also fiscally responsible.
At the middle school level, especially the department chairs, department supervisors play a key role in the purchasing because it's often content specific, right? So it's the teachers might be requesting a new subscription to something, so they will audit that, they will look at that, examine it, see how wide the use would be, and see if it's something that we already have, because that's important. You might already have the same resource that's doing a similar thing, or if it's a newer version of that. So I would say that one of the most important levels is the department supervisors to start with that audit.
And I just want to caveat relative to the numbers, because the textbook line that you're going to see on this page under 5520, that is more of a departmental level textbook line, so the dollar value is not significant. That's typically replacement books. I need 4 or 5 more. When we get to system-wide, Ann's budget, the curriculum budget, when we're doing a district adoption, we need, brand new 6th grade math textbooks for every student in 6th grade, much higher dollar value. That's going to come out of her budget. Periodicals, that could be stuff like that you see that's a very relatively small number. That could be like your Scholastic News or something like that. It's typically they're going to be something that if it is or isn't written into the curriculum, it might be something, there's more teacher discretion here. When they're district-wide assured resources, they're typically in the district budget, and you'll see bigger dollar values associated with those when we come to those pages in a little bit.
Latoya?
Yeah, mine's is just a clarifying question around supplies and fees. What are those?
Sure. So supplies, at some of the same stuff, supplies get broken out. You're going to see instructional supplies kind of across different pages, and who's responsible to purchase the supplies is dependent upon kind of what the supplies are. So at this level, typically, we're giving, at a department level, we're on middle school, right? When I was a department supervisor, I would be able to, within my departmental budget, be able to provide a rough amount of money, $100, $150 for each of my teachers to buy small supplies, things that they would want to use, so it's not coming out of their own pocket, but it's not something that is necessarily provided. At the school level, at the middle school, in the school's budget, you will see, and that's going to come up on the supervision page, you're going to see a larger dollar value dedicated to supplies, and the majority of that is for supplies that the school is providing. So number one, that's going to be like the copy paper for the whole school, all right, which is, believe it or not, the biggest percentage of the supply budget. But then there are other things that schools had traditionally provided to all teachers at the beginning of the year. Now, back in my day, we'd be going down and getting one of those grade books, right? Now it's all online, but things like that, the markers that every teacher needs, the erasers, all the kinds of things that are there. But there are opportunities for in departmental budgets that a department supervisor would control for things like, hey, I want some math manipulatives for my 6th grade class, or I want some trade books in English. I want to be able to buy a set of 10 or more, something that they're not going to be going, if they're bothering Ann for $150, then, we're not managing money well because she's really looking at district-wide purchases. And then what was your second question? I apologize. Dues and fees?
Yeah, I guess just, fees and, supplies and fees, yeah.
Supplies and fees. Just give, my eyes are so
So
bad.
the dues and fees specifically would be, professional associations, things like of that nature that staff would need to be affiliated with.
Right, yeah, thank you. Okay, is that part of the supplies and fees too, or is that different?
So the supplies and fees, when it comes to the
Yeah.
middle school level, I think they're separating a little bit more fees and supplies associated particularly with their intramurals program to keep those a little bit segregated from instructional supplies in the classroom.
Okay, got you. Yeah, thank you.
Ethan?
The total for the middle school year-over-year increase was 6.78%, I believe. Compares to 5.5 for the elementary and 4.5 for the high school. Is that just a function of where the salaries fit in, or?
So
Because
yeah.
there didn't look like there's any major items.
So it's a combination, right? So it is where the salaries fit in. So we're literally taking, the individual person where they are, what their lane is, and rolling them forward. But in the case of elementary, we also have those additional positions.
Okay. So how much would the increase have been if we didn't have those 6 positions?
So the average teacher, we estimate that they're coming in at a particular step. So their salary peak component, we would estimate for a new teacher would be around 75,000.
Okay. So that was figured into that's part of the 5.5.
Yes, and in this case, we actually know who those teachers are.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions about middle school? All right, thank you.
All right, moving us on to page 4 of your packet, reflecting pages D38 and D39 of your binder. So you'll see a slight increase from the adopted current number, which reflects actual student course enrollment relative to projections. So again, when we're looking at things, we're sort of projecting out when you actually get students that'll then make their course selections, and now you're actually trying to schedule them. Sometimes it doesn't work as clean as we might hope, and so that's why you'll see that increase there. We are proposing a decrease of 1.36 FTEs, and that's due to an anticipated reduction of approximately 75 students. And we expect to stay flat with staffing across all of our other areas.
On the staffing enrollment trends, I don't have much more to add. The change is, as Julio mentioned, due to projected decrease in enrollment. But I would like to mention, in terms of our programming, much of the programming is staying the same, although we're excited to highlight the significant upgrade in our CTE, our Career and Technical Education offerings. We are transitioning from our Emergency Medical Response course to a much more robust emergency medical technician course, which will lead to industry certification with immediate job opportunities, where the certification course was kind of an acknowledgement of your work and an acknowledgement of your base knowledge, where the EMT is a direct pipeline. The strategic partnership, we continue to have a strong partnership with West Hartford Fire. I meet with them regularly. Chief Priest is really an amazing leader, and I'm pleased to partner with Ed. They provide 2 staff members who've gotten their industry teaching credential as well. Now they're firefighters, but they have gotten the public safety endorsement to teach, and they teach the emergency medical service instruction portion. So that's the clinical hands-on when you need to carry someone or you need to. So our teachers do all of the normal teaching, but we we partner with WHFD, Fire Department, to come in and offer the clinical excellence that they have in working every day in the field. This is a great opportunity for our students, and we're really pleased that we moved in this direction after much discussion and much support from both, the school administration and Paul, and also West Hartford Fire. So I wanted to note that change because it's not a dollar change, but it's a important program change.
When we
Mary?
look at the, when we look at the financials related to high school, you see similar patterns. And so salaries are reflecting the collective bargaining agreements, offset by the anticipated savings from reduced staffing. And then when we look at operational, you're looking at about 58% for instructional supplies, 6% for computer software, 8% for textbooks, 7% for library books, and 6% for periodicals. And there is no notable variance under equipment.
And I'll just piggyback one comment before questions is what's different about high schools, which is so interesting, is we project based on the number of students, but at the end of the day, it's the FTEs in a department, the full-time teachers can vary slightly from year to year just based on the interest areas that the students have and what they select. So at the end of the day, the bottom line staffing, when we move from the proposed budget to where the budget lives actually on September 1, is going to be based on the course selection. So if all of a sudden students, said, hey, I've decided that I really love math more than anything else in the world, and everyone flocked to that as their elective, not that I'm plugging that, instead of something else, that would create the fluctuations that would exist within the departments themselves. So I point that out. And then all that said, the only other programmatic piece that we've obviously talked about very recently is the potential for a change to a block schedule. But as we've said during that presentation, we would anticipate that to be FTE neutral at this time. So pending your questions on high school.
Latoya?
Thanks. Mine isn't necessarily a question about budget, but just about the fire program. That's amazing. And I was wondering if there's a connection between that program and like the alternative high school programs. And I'm thinking about that because I know our fire department lacks diversity, I think, right? And in the past, when I was in California, we would pair like our alternative high school programs and like youth who went through diversion programming with the fire department, and it actually resulted in a lot of those kids becoming firefighters later. And so just kind of wondering about thoughts about that.
Well, your thoughts about that are Absolutely appropriate. Paul and I have had long discussions, they're not manifesting quite yet, but we've had long discussions about our alternative program, the Reach Alternative High School, having a specific focus and opportunity. Now, just please know that while you're at Reach, if it fits in your schedule, because it is a program that helps you if you're credit deficient and you're a little bit older, and that it's his primary role right now, but those children can also elect to take a class at Conard. So this course would not be out of bounds for them. However, kind of preview for the future, we will continue to discuss opportunities between REACH and courses like CTE and other. Public safety would be a nice pathway, but even other things. And we've even mentioned some initial thoughts to Chief Priest too, so he's aware. And so more work to be done, but the same thinking is happening. So thank you for mentioning it.
I guess following up on LaToya's question in terms of that kind of pipeline, have there been any efforts made to work with the AMR company in town that provides the actual ambulance transportation service in town? Because I know they're a private company, they're structured differently than the fire department, and I'm pretty sure they are always looking to hire the EMTs to do the actual transport.
I can't speak to that level, but first I'd say I wouldn't be surprised, and I can find out if we are in touch with AMR. I know that our new program allows for ride-alongs with the paramedics who don't ride in the AMR, but they have their own vehicles. But I can find out for you, because those are the people also looking for future workers. So I can do a little more research on that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, at a minimum, it's an opportunity to remind of, we did a big career technical job fair. I think last year was the first year.
Manufacturing fair.
Manufacturing fair. I wonder if, as we bring a course like this on, if some of those efforts are expanded to create those kind of inroads partnerships and have AMR and other providers, have a understanding that we have the direct pipeline. So I like the thought.
And I'll just layer in, because putting on my day job hat, we support a First Responders Youth Academy in 3 school districts currently that involves fire, police, and EMR and EMT. And so if you're looking for just models, I think we could be very helpful in just showing those. And I think there's just different ways it works in every town based on the partnerships and the relationships, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So.
Just sorry not to drag it out, but we did attend, and I was thankful to be a member of the planning committee for the regional public safety summit we had this fall we had it on the campus of the Rocky Hill VA, and we brought together educators, all kinds of public safety commissioners, state legislators, to listen to the challenge of getting people into public safety fields. We were able to present models from all over, because everyone does it differently. Everyone does this differently, and we're finding our way. But I think we're most proud of our partnership with West Hartford Fire. To have 2 of their firefighters have a teaching certificate right now is really, really amazing. And they have been, just the best in making sure this program moves forward. So we'll continue with that, and we're always open to other new ways of doing it, because I think we want to keep going beyond fire.
Miriam?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to literacy. So I'm asking because I recognize the need and the tremendous impact that reading support has on our students early on, right? And so looking at early intervention, and the caseload looked high to me in elementary. And so I'm trying to understand, and I should have asked about in middle school and in high school, are the reading support at that point, is it still an intervention? Is it pupil services? And what are their caseloads look like? Again, looking, especially since there's, I think, a bill right now in the Connecticut General Assembly looking at reading support, I believe, for our 4th through 9th grade, as there was previously for K through 3. So I'm just curious about kind of caseload and looking ahead to ensure we have enough support for our students who need.
Great question. So you'll see on the middle school page, there are 5 literacy specialists who are listed, and we have in our larger schools 2. and then in Bristow, 1. Melissa's office, Melissa Cavallero's office, also through specialized instruction, provides a great deal of direct literacy support. So we talk quite a bit about our class sizes to make sure that, they're about on equal par, and we've made some strategic changes to those over the past 2 years, I would say. I'm going to give you an estimate, but I'd have to look it up to be clear. At the last time we were looking at class sizes of 10 to 12. But I would have to do a double check to see if that's still in the right range in the middle school. But we continue to offer literacy support through regular instruction through these 5, and then through specialized instruction for students with more severe, who have identified services, but also they might have more severe reading disabilities. So the partnering has, I think, really been eye-opening, because you don't want to do this kind of work not knowing what the other side is doing. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think it's just important to note that West Hartford in particular has a long history of our 2 offices working in collaboration. And so a couple of years, more than a couple of years now. In 2015, when the legislation changed regarding dyslexia being named as an identification category under IDEA in Connecticut uniquely, we were at the forefront of those changes. And to this day, we have standing practices between our 2 departments where we have a senior leadership steering dyslexia committee that was looking at reading very early on. In fact, we were the inaugural presenters at the International Dyslexia Association for Connecticut for the roadmap to response to legislation. We were very proud of the work we've been doing. We also have a multidisciplinary work group that meets regularly throughout the year. And so Melissa Behrens, Kelly Browse, who oversee our department, as well as key literacy specialists. And we pull in multidisciplinary team members because this work doesn't happen in isolation. And so as Anne was describing, one of the success stories of some of these new legislation movements is that we're not waiting for students to fail. We're intervening through screening measures to be able to provide intervention very early on. And there's a great partnership between our literacy specialists and our special education teams, because we see a real value in the literacy specialists who have deep, intimate knowledge of literacy, which many special education teachers have, but it's important to have that understanding early on. They're getting to know the students, they're intervening, they're monitoring progress. And at some point, there might be a question, how is this child thinking and learning? And it might prompt child find, which does result in an evaluation. And even through that process, we collaborate, and some of the reading evaluations are actually done by the literacy specialists for initial evaluations to make it more comprehensive. And then we do some more standardized measures through our special education teachers. But this is an ongoing practice of collaboration, communication, and partnership that we have at the most senior to on the boots ground level, but it's evolving work. We know that there's a lot of legislative movements, and there's new research coming out all the time about literacy development, reading research, intervention programs, intervention methodology. And so we're still really in touch with all of those processes, and I'm sure there's a Office of Reading through the state of Connecticut. And so they've been putting out a lot of resources and have had a great panel of very forward-facing presenters and presentations more recently. And so we're looking forward to hearing more from the state about what resources might be available. But we've taken advantage of every opportunity for new learning and stay in touch on our own through different groups about research. And our teams are doing a great job responding to it. But it truly is a full continuum. And as Anne said, students might be part of intervention and they might exit intervention, and but there might be students who might need higher levels of intervention, and so we're really individualizing for each student and feel good about that collaboration.
Ethan?
This is more a general question, because we sort of moved past it, but if I go to page C3, I believe, it has nutrition service supplies. I assume that's part of the nutrition fund,
Yes.
because that's a pretty substantial increase.
Yep. And so C is a summary of all the things that we're going through now through the supporting pages. But what's important to note is C1 through 3 are combined funds.
Right.
And so that is going to include grants, nutrition services, so on and so forth. Whereas C4 onward is just the general fund.
Okay. It just, the increase was pretty substantial for that one line item.
And we will get to the nutrition services
Okay.
fund section.
All right. and I wasn't sure where it was. Thank you.
Any more questions related to the high school regular instruction? All right, we can go on.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn us to page 5 of our packet, which reflects page D70 and D71 of the board binder. As you recall, last year, there was a tremendous amount of community feedback related to any proposed scheduling efficiencies with our gifted and talented program. So at this point, I'm happy to report that we're essentially staying flat in that area. In ESOL, you'll see a 1.0 FTE reduction, which, again, just for full transparency, has actually been moved to a page that we'll get to later on, and that's really related to, if you remember, the proposed supervision model shift that Superintendent Vicenius has proposed. So I know that Ann will talk a little bit more about the specifics related to that. And we are proposing a 0.5 increase to the counselor line, and this would be to support the behavioral health needs at Bristow Middle School.
So to add just a little bit more detail to that, we're proposing, as Superintendent Vicenius presented in the first meeting, a shift of one ESOL teacher who's been serving as a curriculum specialist to a department supervisor for ESOL that you'll see on the following page. But this will not be a reduction in services, but really an evolution of leadership necessitated by rapid growth and increasing complexity of our ESOL students. And I can save the rest of the discussion for later when that position comes up, but I just want you to know it is not really a reduction in students that we're doing this. It's for strategic leadership in the department and identifying our response for more complex needs. In terms of the counseling support, Bristow is our smallest middle school, and a lot of parents seek it for personalized environments. For a variety of reasons. They really value the small environment. They're looking for something maybe more that they feel will support their children. But over the past several years, we've heard from parents and from Bristow staff that they have needed a little bit more support in the area of social emotional needs. This addition will make sure we have the clinical capacity to serve our to meet needs, which are fairly consistent and increasing, certainly not decreasing over time, and that will help us to maintain that small school personalized feel at Bristow. So that's the proposal, to add a half counselor there.
When we look at the financials, we are supporting the staff as listed, and in addition, the operating expenses are related primarily to the Gifted and Talented program and the counselor programs.
Questions? Miriam?
Thank you. I don't know much about the Gifted and Talented program other than what I've read on the website, so I apologize. So perhaps you could share, are the Gifted and Talented teachers utilized for any other teaching responsibilities in the district, or are they strictly specialized? And then in which, are they elementary, middle, and high school? How are they, where are they? Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So they are gifted and talented teachers. Like any teacher, they would help with any other duties or anything that the school needs, but they are gifted and talented teachers. They don't have another assigned responsibility. They are shared among staff, so the elementary schools share a portion of this 8.1. So most of the gifted and talented teachers have 2 elementary schools to service, depending on size and what have you. The middle schools also have a portion of this 8.1 FTE, and we offer the Quest program through 8th grade. As you move up in age, though, there are more level classes and more opportunities to take advanced classes, so we don't have that program at the high school. We have healthy participation in grades 4 through 8. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's 8 FTEs across, 14 schools?
Just to layer onto that, do you have a number of students who would be considered enrolled in Quest at any given time?
I could definitely get you that number. Yes, we can pull that number.
Does Would that number include MathQuest, or is that separately
Yes.
counted?
MathQuest as well.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I have a general question about the FTEs, like when they're proposed. Like here, we have a half of an FTE, and I think in high school it was like we're losing 1.36. Are we like chopping off arms, or what? How does that work out?
No, that's a great question. It comes up every year because it doesn't make common sense just looking at it. But they are partial teachers who teach different amounts. For instance, if you taught 3 classes at the high school level, that would be a certain portion of FTE versus if you taught 5 classes, you're a 1.0 FTE. So there are formulas to calculate the percentage FTE, but it all comes down to teaching less than full time. And then if you have more than one person doing that in the same department for whatever reason, which we try to minimize, but if it happens, that's where you get some of those interesting numbers.
Okay, yeah, I was guessing that. I guess, and so the crux of my question, I guess, is, when either A, when we see like the high school one of like taking out 1.36 is a teacher that's already left, that job not being fulfilled, or is someone?
I can jump
you.
on that, sure. So what's interesting about the high school is because the FTE staffing there is driven by student enrollment and by student course selection, you can have a fluctuation, and typically most of the FTEs, as Ann was saying, because it's kind of based on a 5 teaching, so we talk in terms of 0.2s, one section kind of being 20%. You can go up a 0.2 or down a 0.2 just based on a section break. If you need 2 sections of something versus 3 versus 1. Where you get this 0.6 kind of stuff some of the time is with oftentimes with our PE classes, because they were a certain number of days a week, so they're not meeting 5 days a week, so then they get into kind of the decimal values, into the hundredths place, and that's where you see some of that. Another interesting thing, it's not as frequent, but some specific teaching assignments are budgeted differently. So in the same way that you saw you seeing the reduction in an ESOL teacher, you're going to see a corresponding ad on a different page, because we're not cutting the position. We're changing how it's budgeted, and we're also changing its job description. Some teachers might have a role, and sometimes that's with our department supervisors who have, 80% of their assignment is supervision and 20% of their assignment is teaching. So 20% of their salary might land on a high school page, and 80% of their salary would land on the supervision page, and then you'll see those decimal values similarly for supervision. So we do have part-time staff, and the amount of their FTE when we have part-time staff is based on the percentage of a full-time teaching load that they're doing, or the percentage of days or days of a week that they're teaching.
Thank you. So just, I guess, for anyone who, is diving into these, they shouldn't be thinking like, oh, there's -1 teacher now in ESOL programming. It's like, it's more of like the need for that 0.5 or 5 credits is now being shifted type of a situation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's 100% correct.
Okay.
And then on some of the other changes, not necessarily on this page, but maybe on the previous page, what you're seeing is a net value as well. So you might be going up in a certain area, going down in a certain area, but what's on the page is like the net change.
Miriam?
A number question. Would you have a number for the gifted and talented program cost? So the salaries of just like for that director and teacher cost? Or where could I find that? Thank you.
Yes, so if you go to page D74, you'll be able to see well, yes, but so the gifted materials cost, for instance, would be broken out there. So the 34,000 is for materials there.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
Any other questions on this section?
I'll just piggyback, and I apologize, I could have done a better job with that, I guess. So as you're going through the packet, Julio's going to give you those 2-page references. Those are typically the summary pages. So because this is a summary of system-wide, D70, D71, that's going to show you everything. As you then flip over the next pages, it breaks it down to each of the individual departments. So you'll have 2 pages, a cost page, a staffing and programmatic description for gifted and talented. You'll have a corresponding page for counseling and so on and so forth. So my apologies for not saying that up front.
I think we're good to go.
All right, I'll take us to page 6 of the packet, which again reflects pages D79 to D81 in your board binder. You'll see a proposed 1.2 increase in department supervisor line. That's a result of essentially 2 items. The first is, which Ann had previously talked about, and Paul as well, is related to the shift in the ESOL model. So moving that ESOL teacher has now got shifted over into department supervisor line. So that is the 1.0 there. I think, Jen, that's what you were sort of referencing before. And then you'll also see a 0.2 increase. And this increase reflects the removal of a teaching responsibility from one of our department supervisors to allow him to take on some additional responsibilities, which I believe Ann will talk a little bit more about what those responsibilities are. This year, we also had an increase of 4 non-certified support staff, and that was based on our students' needs as we looked at those. We believe we'll be able to reduce this number by 2 for an overall increase of 2 FTEs for the adopted 25-26, from the adopted 25-26 budget.
So thank you, Julio. This gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the change from the ESOL teacher to the ESOL department supervisor. And as I said before, it's not a reduction, but really an evolution of leadership necessitated by growth in increasing complexity of our multilingual learners. Specifically, we have seen real changes in the students who are coming to us, and one category is students who are called, who are labeled as SLIFE, and SLIFE is an acronym that means students with limited or interrupted formal education. So these are students who have just not been in school. So they might be in their home country, they have had interrupted or limited formal education. Maybe they're studying, maybe they're going to school intermittently, but they're limited. And this group, we've seen an increase in that group. We've also seen students who are older. So if you're older and you're coming in with few credits, now you're an older high school student who might be the credit level of a 9th grader, and then all of a sudden you have the age out issue of, is it going to be good to be 21 in high school and things like that. So we've seen an increase in students coming with interrupted education, students coming without documentation on their education, so it's hard to understand the credits. We look for them, we get transcripts when we can. All different types of situations that make the need for a leadership more significant for us. And also, by definition, if you are a student who receives ESOL services, you're in the high needs group. And it is one of our target focuses is to close the achievement gap with our high needs group, especially when we look at some other factors. Some of our students in this group, especially our Hispanic learners, we're looking at gaps in attendance, punctuality to school, credit achievement, and outcomes on standardized tests. So this is a group of people that, of students who are in need that we believe a leadership position will help us set the direction more clearly and have insight into programming that can best meet their needs, including different models that we haven't considered. So this is a real need to have a formal leadership in this role. And then going on to the other increase, this is an increase of taking one teaching class away from the Career and Technical Education Coordinator's position. And this basically builds on what I said before about fire and EMT. This person has a great deal of responsibility for looking at students to be in internships, in job shadowing. And over the past few years, we feel like we're getting some real traction in this area. This person led a successful manufacturing tour. We had our first official signing day last year, which was for the students who are going into trades. That was a really great event. We had a bus tour taking our kids. So the manufacturers in town came to the manufacturing fair, and we followed up by making a bus tour, having the children go visit. You don't think of West Hartford as a manufacturing center, but we do have manufacturing, and it's great to promote that manufacturing and let them know there are jobs right here. So things like job shadowing, internships, manufacturing tours, bus tours, the EMR to EMT change, and this person also served and helped support that statewide public safety summit. So in order to release this person to do more of that, which is so important to us, that is the other point two. Point two. So that is the increase you see there in that line for department supervisors.
Thank you. And so when we look at salaries, we are supporting those aforementioned changes. And as for operating, this is where Paul had referenced earlier, where some of those central school purchases made from those offices can be seen. And so that is approximately 63% of the operating expense. And then there are those curriculum operating expense purchases that Paul referenced as well earlier. And so you can see that in the operating expense, and then in the equipment, those are just anticipated upcoming equipment purchases for the year.
Questions? Ethan?
So on this document, it has non-certified support staff. Are those the paraprofessionals, or is that something else?
So the non-certified staff, if you look on D81, it's broken out. So that would be your second part of the page there. It ties to that group.
Yes,
So
that's all your school secretaries, your TAs, your paras.
So there's, here. So it's got teaching assistants of 52 and 71 paraprofessionals. Okay.
Correct.
Is it possible, not today, but later on, to get it by unit, like elementary versus middle school versus high school?
So I think, there's part of that summary does live in the data supplement, specifically on pages, give me one sec, 16 and 17. So you have your paraprofessionals on page 16, and you have the teaching assistant staffing on page 17.
Okay.
So if that's the major focus area, then, if you wanted secretarial or something, we could do that as well. But I just wanted to, since I have my mic on, take privilege to just reference, in case there's any doubt at all, for the ESOL supervision, that was a teacher leader position that didn't have direct service hours with students, and so the shift will not have any impact on our students. We're going to have a teacher leader position just be recategorized as a department supervisor. So I just, for you and for the viewing public, no impact on, no reduction of service on our students.
Any questions? I had one question just related to operating expenses. Are you able to separate out what costs in there are sort of in compliance with testing software you would need to have in order to meet state requirements versus optional testing software that we're choosing as a district, I guess? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, let me take a stab, and I see they're ready to jump in too. So at the state level, I don't know that there are no direct costs for the SAT or Smarter Balanced or anything. The indirect costs are, you need to have the appropriate number of devices. You need to be able to refresh those devices. The state does provide us guidance with what the minimum requirements are. You certainly need your network to be able to handle the volume of traffic. So those are kind of the indirect costs, and those things we can at least. I can't pinpoint what percentage of that is related to the state testing, but we can talk about what those costs are. That's coming up, I believe, in section F. But then in terms of there are costs for testing software and some things that would be, especially if it's there through the curriculum office, it would be, I would imagine, partly here.
Well, your question raises a really good point. There has, one of the, we do have some items, especially with the new legislation for reading, that required us to have a specific kind of program and give it 3 times a year. So if that's kind of thing you're talking about? Yeah.
I think there's just so much out there now, and then there's things that I think you have to you don't really have a choice because the state is imposing it versus what choices you're saying this is something that West Hartford is
Yeah, I don't have the
elected.
number here, but I can tell you there's a number of things. One pops in my mind right away that I mentioned to Barb that we need because we really don't have a great choice on it. And we had something, but it was not used as much. And so the state was pushing certain assessment platforms better than others. And so we've had to change, which was actually a very significant increase in that line item. I don't have the total number though, but we could look at that.
Yeah, we have them combined here, so we'd have to take a look to see which were required.
Yeah, so correct me, that's Dibbles, that's
Dibbles is the.
M class, no.
Dibbles M class is a product, and that it was a significant increase in requirements that we did, and also has a submodule called RAN that we have to have. We can't not have. I mean, we have a choice of 3 products maybe, but but we can't have none of those 3. We have to have one of those 3 at least, and it is a significant increase that year in that particular part of that line. But I don't have the breakout.
Thank you. All right. Oh, Miriam?
One quick question. On page D79, looking at the summer curriculum workshop, could you speak to that, please? Yes. 5188.
I just wanted to make sure I see it. So each summer, well, I shouldn't say each summer. During the year, the department supervisors and our director of elementary and secondary will be, and the teachers are monitoring adjustments in curriculum. So you imagine English teachers are sitting around CSI on a Wednesday, and they're talking about their needs, and they're noting some changes that they'd like to see in the curriculum, something that they'd like to adjust. They take those notes for a period of time. When the needs start to be more significant than a minor adjustment, they make recommendation to their department supervisor to do a revision of the existing curriculum, and that is, they send by October, usually they'll send a request to my office. We need to rewrite something or at least revise. Small revisions are made as they go, nothing specific, but when these revisions become more significant or there's a new initiative from the state, for instance, like we reference the science of reading 10 times tonight because it's such a big change. So we had to look at, although our curriculum was approved by the state, it needed some adjustment, and that you're rewriting 6th grades, K through 5, in one of the most important areas in elementary school. So those requests come to my office, and we aggregate those requests across K-12 and all of the departments, and then we have to prioritize which projects will go forward each summer, and that's the process. Sometimes we'll say, we can't do it yet, but we'll put it on a priority for next year. Sometimes there's new courses. You might have remembered the African American Studies course and Latino Studies course that the state was pushing. We wanted to make sure that although they had curriculum, that we had reviewed it and understood it, and we were prepared to deliver that. So sometimes there's state initiatives. Sometimes it is a change. Sometimes department supervisors can also request a new course if they say in need, because times change. You don't want to just do the same thing all the time. There's needs and changes that arise. So the process is they make requests, and then we prioritize and we write as many as we possibly can. A lot of it's revision. Full rewrites are not common, only when new courses arise.
I have one more question. Also on D79, and I ask this truly with the most respect, just looking at numbers, while the percentage for these two, so looking at line 5110 and 5115, just curious about the numerical change in the difference. So is that are those contracted increases built into salary?
I'm sorry,
Or
did you say 5110 and what was the other?
for the secretary and clerical salaries, 5115. Just looking, the first one, the difference is 242,968, and the other secretarial and clerical looks like over 100,000.
Yes, and so the rates would be contractual and consistent with their collective bargaining agreements and then any staffing changes that are made.
Good. Great. Any other questions? Okay, we can move along. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to have Ann pass the baton to my friend Melissa now too, I think, since she's been sitting there patiently. So again, this will reflect page 7 of your packet and pages E5 and E6 of your board binder. So you'll see a proposed increase of 1.5 in the intensive academic program. This is a result of the planned expansion for the upcoming school year. And then you'll also see that due to student needs, we had to increase our FTEs in the resource program by 2.2 FTEs this academic school year. We plan to maintain this current staffing level, resulting in the proposed 2.2 increase.
All right, thank you, Julio. Good evening, everyone. I had the pleasure of presenting and sharing some information about pupil services not too long ago. We have the honor and privilege of serving students ages 3 through 22 who have individualized education plans to support students with disabilities. And we are currently serving over 1,900 students in the district. And while you heard trends of decreasing enrollment in some places, what you'll notice is that we have an increasing enrollment in pupil services. And to that end, I do want to ask you to reference your supplemental data in the back, starting on page 8. As I share some information about our students in our program, it's really nice that Barbara has made these beautiful visuals to kind of highlight some of the trends that we're seeing. And one of the nice things is it provides a 10-year look back on that first page, page 8, and you can see that there's been almost a 40% increase in our intensive academic program alone over the past 10 years. Additionally, if you turn the page to page 9, you'll see our student prevalence rate in graph format to help you understand the trajectory of growth that we're seeing year over year. We attribute this to a number of factors. First, we see that there is a higher incidence rate overall, and we're similar with the state. But we also know that we are a destination district for special education. You know, we receive calls from families who are looking to relocate specifically to access high-quality resources and special education programming. And so the students who are, the families who are looking for our programming, we have a high level of service for students here in our own continuum. You'll also see there the information on our out-of-district placements, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then if you turn to the page 10, you'll see our resource students and related service students. And then if you turn one more page, you'll see the trends in our intensive behavior program and our intensive academic program. And on page 12 is our early learning center program. And so given our large population of special education students, we do have our own continuum in district, and we have highly specialized programs starting at the youngest ages of age 3 with our early learning center. We have intensive academic programs servicing students across all age levels. Our intensive behavior program, which also includes an alternative high school program called Strive, and our post-secondary program, which services students until age 22. Additionally, I'd like to highlight that we have the largest deaf and hard of hearing program in a public school in the state of Connecticut, which is something we're very proud of, and it's a very active community. And I hope you've heard that there's a mural that we're working in collaboration that's made the news, which is such a beautiful thing. When we look at the changes in our programs, one of the things you'll see is that our intensive academic program has been growing at a much higher rate, as shown by these graphs than some of our other programs. We expanded last year by adding 3 classrooms, 2 at the elementary school and 1 at the post-secondary level. And those were actually offset by the SEED grant. We talked a little bit last year about the underfunding of excess cost grant, Governor Lamont's funding efforts to really refund special education. There was a bill that was passed for $40 million. We were the recipient, I think, of, I just referenced my note, 1.3 to really offset the shortfall of the excess cost grant, which was a huge savings for us. And we also are the beneficiaries of the SEED grant, which really helped us in our expanding program needs for intensive academic. And if you reference that line for this year, what we're seeing is that our students who are matriculating from elementary to middle school, we will have a larger cohort of students. So we'll be adding 2 intensive academic classrooms at the middle school level in response to student needs. Our programming staffing levels will be stable at the elementary level, given the number of students matriculating from the early learning center up to the elementary that require the more intensive programming. Our intensive behavioral programming is stable staffing. What we've noticed is a little bit of a stabilization in our trend in those programs, which has led us to think about ways we might actualize savings in that way and service more students. Area districts have looked to have tuition seats, and Canton just opened a program. Many of our public schools have programs that have tuition seats. We've never explored that opportunity because we've fully utilized our program. There were no seats to offer, even when somebody had asked. We at this time have that opportunity, and we're looking to open tuition seats, but I think it's important for you to know that there would be a very clearly defined process for any referrals or student tuitions that we're looking to explore, as well as involvement with the school administration, our school-based teams, our board-certified behavior analysts, and all of those related service team members as part of that process. And it would in no way, shape, or form impact the services or staffing that are part of the program as it stands today. So our students would still have access to the program. We're not looking to expand the overall threshold of a caseload in that program, for example. It's just that our current enrollment is low enough for us to consider that at this time, instead of closing or collapsing the program, we can offer tuition seats. So we're looking forward to having that opportunity. In the resource area, what we're seeing is that our number will be stable. As Julio mentioned, we did add FTEs this current school year. And, as we sit here today, all of our numbers are numbers in a snapshot in time in the moment. And this is, for us, PPT season. We're having many annual reviews, and all of our work is driven by student need. So as meetings are held and services are determined for students, that can impact and shift the level of staffing that we need. And so we are always closely monitoring that. And so this is a representation in the resource field of an exact example of that, of us understanding what our students' needs were and having to add FTEs after the budget had already passed. And right now, at this present moment, what we're seeing is that the FTEs will be stable, but they will shift between levels. With this larger cohort of students, it's the last of our COVID cohort, so to speak, of those kindergartners will be moving up to middle school. And so there is a larger cohort of students with individualized education plans. And so those FTEs will move up to the secondary levels to follow the student needs. So everything's really driven by that need. Our early learning center is staying stable in terms of staffing. And then I just want, while it's not on here, it's kind of embedded below in the operating expense. I do want to talk a little bit about our out of districts because they are part of our continuum, and there is a financial component to those. We have done significant work around our out of district placements to ensure that students have high quality programming because they are still our students. We conduct regular site visits. Lauren Dell, who's here tonight, is one of our department supervisors who oversees our out of district programs. We conduct regular site visits, we're in close contact with families, and we work with multidisciplinary teams both in our schools and the teams at those out-of-district schools to have an effort to bring kids back, not just for the purposes of bringing kids back, but to ensure that they have high-quality outcomes for their education. And we do believe that they'll have the best outcomes with us. And so to that end, last year at this time, we had 140 students that were placed out of district, and at this present moment, we have 125. We've brought back 8 students fully to district as of this present moment just this year. And we have several students who are on what we call bifurcated programs, where we're in the process of transitioning back, where they might be taking a class or two at their home school, but also spending some time at their current placement. And we do that very slowly and gradually to ensure that the transition back to their least restrictive environment is successful and meets their needs. And so that is one of the processes we're engaging in right now. We have 10 students that are in process of, we're exploring return to district. of that total number of students who are outplaced. And we have 20 anticipated graduations or age outs. And I'll say that with a caveat, put a star next to that, because students who might be graduating might also need a transition program. So that number might fluctuate a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Barb to share a little bit about the budgetary component, and then I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Melissa. And so when you're looking at those financial impacts below, it's capturing exactly what Melissa was speaking about. So it's those staffing changes, the additional grant funding impact, and then as it relates to the operating budget, the largest share there is the out-of-district tuition. That's over 99% of that operating expense. And then there are just a few very small adjustments within Melissa's everyday needs.
Questions? John?
Yeah, I had a question about transitioning students back from out-of-district placements. Do those transitions happen during the school year, or is it the kind of thing you look at from year to year?
It can happen at any point in time, quite honestly, because we respond to student needs. Once a team meets and they find a student's ready to return, we start to craft a very careful plan. That really starts with the family's engagement. We bring them in. They might tour our current programs. They might revisit their home school. We have a team of professionals that will go out and observe the current out-of-district site to better understand that environment, what's led to the student's success, and what supports we might need to put into the transition. And it could look different ways. We've had some students, especially some of our older students, who have agency and can say, I'm ready, this is my time, and they've picked a date and they've fully transitioned back. We've also had plans where we have throughout the school year started with one class at a time, or because we have the early release Wednesdays, tried Wednesdays as a starting point. It really has been individual. We have had mostly students transition across the school year, but we have had students who've started just new and clean and fresh at the beginning of a school year too. So it really is just unique to each individual student, their program and profile, and how we could best set them up for success. And we take into so many considerations and factors that might lead to that success.
Jason?
On the the tuition seats, do we have any idea of what kind of revenue stream that could possibly be?
So using some of our neighboring towns that have offered seats, we have estimated approximately $100,000, so it would offset about one teacher and their benefits.
Jennifer? Did you question?
Thank you. I know I missed the beginning of this. I'm curious about the social workers and psychologists. I guess I first want to confirm this is, 'cause I feel like I've seen counselors on other pages. So I guess my first question is like, who are those people in particular versus a counselor? And then my second question is, do you feel like, I think we've spoken a number of times at separate meetings about some of the mental health challenges that kids are facing now for many different reasons. I'm assuming from the proposal you feel like you have enough, but I'm just curious, like, from what you're seeing, your end of things, do you think this is sufficient to meet the students' needs?
So you're a little ahead of us. You're on the next page, but
It's his fault. I was cheating off of him, and he was ahead.
I'll answer the question about the programming and staffing when we get to the next page, but I will just share that they are different than school counselors in that they provide direct therapeutic services.
Thank you.
LaToya?
Yeah, my question is also about the tuition seats, not the not the money part, but could you speak to why we have some open seats? Are those direct results of the success of the program, and why other folks would want to come?
Yes, and actually, we just had a number of school districts that had reached out. They come and tour our programs all the time to get ideas, which we appreciate. And so there has been interest in the community, and there have been questions asked about the opportunity for tuition seats in West Hartford. So there is that opportunity. We do see great successes. We have had students transition back from out of district to a program and then transition even out of the program into resource and sometimes even out of special education, which is a real celebration. So yeah, we are seeing that, and it's a wonderful thing, and we're hoping to be able to serve more students in our community. But it has been an area of interest, and we just have never had the opportunity to offer it more widely.
Just about the, just a question about the tuition seats, going back, because we're all really interested in the tuition seats tonight. Does that mean that, say, in a classroom where where there's tuition seats available, we have a teacher staffed in that classroom teaching, and we basically just have 3 spots open, for example? There's a class of 12 students, and we budget for 12 students, and there's 9 students from West Hartford enrolled, and there's 3 openings. Does that mean that those 3 openings are just available and the teacher's there anyway?
That's correct. So it fits into our current staffing model, so there would be no extra resources. The only thing that might be a consideration is if a student does have a one-to-one or some type of adult support staff, but that will be part of the contract with the other school district, so it would be part of their tuition if there was any additional staffing.
If you had a student who had a one-to-one, would the sending district pay for that one-to-one
Yes.
person as well?
Correct.
Ethan?
2 unrelated questions. The seat you're selling isn't in the budget, though, is it?
Yes, so it is in the budget, and where you see it is we are still maintaining the teachers up, and if you look on page E6, you'll still see the teachers inherently there, but where you see the delineation is if you look in our current to budget for tuition funded, it goes up 1 seat. I'm sorry, 1 FTE. And so this year in this category, we do have some positions that are, they're not tuition seats, but they're funded by services that we bill other districts for.
Yeah, and if you'll recall from the PowerPoint presentation, when I presented it, it was I had very few superintendent changes. That was one of the dollar values that was highlighted on that page.
So-
But it'll live in a line item where the money will get received.
Okay. So we're assuming one.
We're assuming $100,000 of revenue.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't clear. Second question, you went from 140 to 125, hopefully. So that's like about a 10%.
Talk about out-of-district
Yeah,
placements.
district, yeah, I'm sorry. The line item is flat from year to year. So that assumes that the cost goes up 10% on the 125?
We always assume that the cost is going to go up because while the overall number of students is going down, this is the first year we've actually seen financial benefit to the efforts that we've made. We've seen great benefit to students, but the financial line hasn't changed because every year tuition goes up. At the state, it's important for you to know there are efforts afoot to regulate costs for out-of-district providers and private providers. That hasn't quite happened yet, but I'll use Massachusetts Commonwealth as an example. The Commonwealth sets rates. So every school, every private approved school in the state of Massachusetts can only charge the same rate. So speech and language services in one school is the same as the next school. Here in the state of Connecticut, it's not currently regulated, so there's great variability amongst cost of special education programs, both in the total tuition and whether they're a la carte. So in the future, we actually think that that's something that's moving forward. We know that there are several efforts underway to gather data and information, some of which we're involved in with the state. So we do believe that that's a concerted effort that will take place in the near future, which will give us more certainty about the rates of tuition where we could base it off
No, I
of
understand.
unknown.
So that's interesting. It raises a different question. The percentage of kids that go out or do the out of district tuition, whatever. How many are in the state of Connecticut? How many in other states, especially Massachusetts? Ballpark.
Most of our students are in the state. We have very
Oh,
few students who are out of state.
I'm sorry, say again?
We have very few students who are out
Okay.
of state.
So then, because I was thinking somebody could choose to go to a different state, but that's probably difficult logistically.
Well, there's no choice because it's a PPT placement. So the way it works is when a planning and placement team meets, we go through an exploration process and the team will actually decide the placement. So sometimes out-of-state placements occur because there's a program. We're a very small geographical area. There might not be a specific program located in our geographical area that can support a student's needs, particularly students who require a very high level of care with more advanced facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Can you speak to what proportion of out-of-district placements result out of the due process, out of due process, where we're required to send students?
It's a very good question. We have not had any fully adjudicated cases that have come through due process, but certainly the legal landscape can impact student placements. I wouldn't be at liberty to speak about specific information because the N is so small, it might be personally identifiable, but it is part of the legal process in the state of Connecticut, whereby which there might be some other factors that lead to out-of-district placements other than PPD decisions.
Thank you. Now, one last question about the tuition seats, or at least one last question from me. How would those seats be, say, marketed to other districts?
So what we would want to do is put together an information packet that would be available, and we would share it with other area districts and directors who are always looking for placements. Canton really recently just started their own program, and it was as similar as them sending out a flyer, and I think they filled their seats right away. So I think just getting information out there that there will be availability will help us market it.
There's a structure that Melissa participates in relative to formal meetings of directors of special education. So there's a tight network.
Great, thank you.
Miriam?
Are these numbers solely for students with IEPs, or does this take into account 504 plans? That's question one.
These are only students with individualized education plans.
Thank you. So my next question is, how many students do we have with 504 plans? Is that number increasing? And then how is the district measuring the impact of students with 504 plans on staffing needs?
Great question. So our number the last time I checked was well over 1,000 for students with Section 504 plans. That is another demographic that continues to grow. It grew most in response to legislative changes that came out of ADA. I'm going to think it was 6 years ago now, that really kind of opened what a qualifying area of disability and impact on life functioning could possibly mean under Section 504. There are very few direct student services under Section 504. Section 504 is generally for accommodations only. So when we think about the differences between your Section 504 plan and an individualized education plan, your Section 504 plan provides you ramps to access and ways to access your education that doesn't change the content, whereas your individualized education plan includes specially designed instruction, which may modify curriculum in some way. So the modifications and specially designed instruction really live in an individualized education plan, whereas a Section 504 plan really is focused on the accommodations. It is possible that there might be some related services that might be part of a Section 504 plan, but it's not the norm. It's more the the outlier.
And I was going to piggyback, but I don't know, are you looking at me to piggyback, or you had something you wanted to add first?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are no, as Melissa said, the bulk is in IDEA, but, I'm sorry. But there are demands on the staff through 504 to holding meetings annually, and that is our 504 coordinators who at the high school are our counselors, and we have 504 coordinators in all of our elementary schools. So to schedule those meetings, hold those meetings, go through that process, and to have someone oversee 504 is not the same type of cost, but it is certainly something that we have to monitor, and we have it, legally mandated. So we have to make sure that all of the provisions are followed. So it's a different kind of cost to, I think, account for, but it certainly comes in the way of time that our folks are devoting to those meetings, scheduling those meetings, taking those, holding those meetings, contacting, all the types of things they do to implement the plans, although the plans are very different from.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that from a financial perspective, and it'll come up, and so I'll signal it. It'll come up where in a page or two here where you, or maybe we passed it already, you see a fraction of a supervisor. The other, because we have a person who oversees 504 for us for the district, and so half of their job is related to our alternative high school program supervision, and the other half of their job is related to 504 management at the district level. But then our school counselors are, especially at the secondary level, are the primary overseers, are assistant principals at the elementary level. So that's an area where, hey, in the past we've looked at with enrollment trends, could we provide any reductions there? And the risks generally are the increases that we see with behavioral health needs, and then the increase in demands for case management for 504. So we've maintained level staffing for those positions, and then of course did the redesign of the elementary supervision model last year, 2 years ago last year, in support of those kinds of needs.
I guess a follow-up question to that is, so if we, let's say, have 30% of our district receiving accommodations and specialized services, looking then at the teacher load to make sure that we're accommodating. And so I'm thinking about the impact on the teachers on the ground and managing a class, and 30% of their classroom who has accommodations of varying kinds and curriculum, required individual education plan. So I'm just trying to
100%.
understand how that translates into staffing and budgeting and anticipation of needs.
It's a lot of, a lot of that can live within professional learning, especially, we had, it's a little dated now, but we brought experts in back in the day when universal design for learning was more of a new term, to basically provide recognition that, if there are accommodations that are going to support someone who has some form of, whether it's a learning disability specifically or just a need based on a life skill as identified under Section 504, whatever that adaptation to your instruction might be to make that content area instruction more accessible is not going to just be good for that child, it's going to be good for every child. And so there's a lot of professional learning that we try to continue to do, continuously refresh to support teachers with that load. But please know, and please let any teacher who's listening know, we do hear that we recognize the demands are significant on teachers in terms of what they have to face and be able to react to in order to provide the high quality of education that we expect. And it is not anything that I would say is without challenge.
Any other questions? Jennifer?
This is a curious question. When I talk about budget with neighbors and such in the community, one of the recurring comments I get as well, the budget's so high because we're a destination district for kids with special needs. And so families with special needs with their kids, they move here, and like our budget then, is so much higher for that. And I feel like in the short time I've been on the board, it seems to me from discussions that's actually not the case. But for anybody like watching or looking at this, I'm just intrigued if there's any commentary on that perception at least.
I think I'll take that. We definitely are a destination district, and I think we take great pride in that. We have a federal and legal obligation, and I'd also say moral obligation, to support students with disabilities. And I feel like West Hartford is such a special community that is so embracing of individuals with disabilities. And I look at the Next Chapter bookstore and the magical place that has become because of the beautiful community of West Hartford being so inclusive. So I do think there is truth to that we are definitely a destination district. So I do want to just be clear. I do believe that. I get calls from people who are moving from California who say, where should I move? because I want to go to this program. And so we have those conversations, but I think that in terms of our operating costs, I think we're very fiscally responsible. I think that in terms of the cost that we are going to always be responsive to student needs. Student need drives this budget. Student need drives these projections, and this will change. And you see even the changes tonight. Like, I estimated that resource teachers would be down, but they were up, and we responded to that, similar to class section breaks. Like, we have to be responsive to student need. We'll always be fiscally responsible. We are always thoughtful about that. But at the end of the day, I think student need will always be our top priority.
Oh, do you have a question? Latoya?
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say thank you for saying that. I think I think it's good. And thanks for asking that question. Like, I think that is something that we do really well here, and there's a lot of families that can speak to that. And I also wanted to speak to the 504s too, and like my own experience as a classroom teacher. When I did my due diligence and like understood all of my students' 504s, that's how I taught my class. And my first year teaching, my students were like, they were considered English language learners. And I do that because I'm like, they're bilingual, trilingual, like smarter than we are. I'll say that. Like, we learn one language, they learn two or three. But they were, labeled English language learners. They were behind in reading a year and a half. And I ran my classroom from that lens of like, how do I provide the accommodations? How do I work with the para? How do I work with the community? And I'm just sharing that to say, like, my first year teaching, without a teaching credential, my students broke state records and grew 2.2 years in 1 year in reading. And that was because of exactly what you're saying, that I allowed the information that I gathered from my individual students to drive my instruction. And I didn't have to learn that in a credentialing program. And so I just want to like put that out there because I do like, I like our approach to it. And I think I strongly believe in like, how do we push that into tier one and support our teachers in that part, like you're saying, and like see it from that lens. So yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share that insight because I think there's a benefit to having a teacher here at the table.
Ethan?
To follow up on the destination location, have we statistically looked at what percentage of special needs or per capita we have students versus other towns and nearby?
We do have that data. So the state, I think, is at 19%, and we're right in line with them in terms of incidence rates. And it's comparative to other areas. But when we look at our move-ins, to give you an example, I think it was July 1 to the beginning of the school year, we had 73 move-ins with individualized education plans just before the school year started, from July 1 to the very first day of school.
Okay, but statistically, you're saying we're in line with everybody else.
Prevalence rate.
For the
Yeah,
state,
for the
I want to
state,
qualify,
yeah.
that's a state average. When you look, say, at Dirk B or something like that, we're very distinct. But the demographic reference group that Dirk B that West Hartford is in.
Okay. Is there any way to look at a comparison of, I guess, more difficult cases versus more, other places, or?
Well, I think what you might be asking is based on trends. So what you're seeing here in the response to the trends that we're seeing is that overall we're growing, but in particular we're growing in our intensive academic program,
Yeah.
which serves high need students. And so that really is reflective of exactly what you're asking is that we're seeing within the trend of growth that specifically that area is an area we're seeing a larger population.
Okay.
And
No, it's just
you're making me think, Ethan, of Melissa, at the end of the year, we do the performance and profile report, and there's a breakdown in that report that we provide you annually that identifies the number of students by disability category, and sometimes the disability category kind of hints to different degrees of complexity of need. And there are comparative, if I remember correctly, there are comparative statistics for where the district is versus where the state average is.
Okay,
So I can point you to last year's report, and I can show you some of that if that's of interest.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Miriam?
This is a kind of more general comment in response to my colleague Jen, and that is that our budget has increased over $50 million in 5 years. And if we continue at the trajectory that we're going forward, potentially in another decade, our budget could be $500 million. And so that really raises the questions of who can afford to live in West Hartford if our taxes are going to be so high. So there's certainly a question about affordability and what our budget looks like for our town and for the future. So that's just one comment there.
Jason?
I would just add to that, I'm not downplaying affordability. Everybody knows that's real. But every time that Paul presents his budget and the budget that you guys put together, one thing stands out to me, and it's this chart that shows where we are on per pupil spending. And I don't know that you could ever say we spend too much when we're 90th in the state.
We can move on to the next section.
All right, thank you. So I'll take us to page 8 of your packet, which aligns with pages E21 and E22 of your binder. You'll notice a modest increase of 0.5 FTE for a social worker, which will be allocated to the post-secondary program to address student needs. Additionally, there is a 0.2 FTE increase for speech pathologists, also driven by student need. And then finally, we are proposing an additional 0.4 FTE for an occupational therapist to support the district in response to growing student needs in that area.
So in addition to the services provided by our special education teachers, we rely on our related service providers, such as our social workers, our school psychologists, our speech and language pathologists, our occupational therapists, and our physical therapists, as well as our teachers of the deaf and nurses to support students in all of our schools. And so what we're seeing here tonight is a small increase to support our post-secondary program, which continues to grow, one of the largest post-secondary public transition programs in the state of Connecticut. And we are looking to have more students next year. And with that, we are looking to increase our clinical support to help students navigate the social complexities of adolescence and adulthood. We also added that point 2 was actually an add this year to make a speech and language pathologist whole at the high school. So that's a current add. And then next year, again, in response to that trend we're seeing with the increase of our intensive academic program, we are taking a 0.6 occupational therapy position and changing it to a 1.0 to support the needs of the program students because we anticipate that at this time. We certainly know that, again, these are all snapshots, to Jennifer's excellent question about, mental health. And right now, based on what we know, we do anticipate that this is an appropriate projection, but that can change in coming months as we continue to survey what student needs are. But I would like to share that we do have a great partnership with the Bridge, that it both includes a partnership whereby which we have contracted services that provide individual counseling, mentoring, and groups for students across all grade levels, as well as a middle school program where the Bridge actually rents space for us. It's completely no cost to the school district, but full cost to students and families at the middle school where they can access a full-time clinician during the school day for private therapeutic intervention. And families have really appreciated that opportunity because it allows them to have access to a clinician who otherwise might have long wait lists after school where everybody's vying for that availability and they have competing obligations with sports, intramurals, extracurriculars, music, and so on. And so that's been a really nice partnership with them. And we actually just spoke with them recently and are looking to expand that program into the high school for next year so that the high school students have that opportunity as well. We had a previous relationship with Hartford Healthcare, and that individual no longer is able to work in the school setting. And so this partnership will allow us to continue to offer an expansion of our clinical services, but again, no cost to the school district, but also offers families a really valuable resource. I'll turn it over to Barbara to share more about the budget.
Great, thank you. And so when we're looking at these financials, We're looking at the individuals that are in the positions and making estimates for those additional increment changes. And so that is reflected in the salaries. And then, as you can see, there is a little bit of variance between operating expense and equipment based on anticipated need for items that Melissa's group needs, including instructional materials, psych tests, and things of the like.
Thank you. Any questions? Miriam?
I have a question. Is any revenue generated from private insurance or Medicaid for any of these services in the schools? Is that a thing?
We do file for Medicaid reimbursement. We have a quarterly filing where we are reporting staff time and also any services that would be eligible for reimbursement. And so we do work to do that. And we generate about, I think last year was about $200,000 in revenue, and that's used to offset the costs.
Thanks.
I had a quick question about the post-secondary program, similar to what we were talking about earlier with the intensive academic program. Is there an opportunity for tuition spots in that program or expanding that program since it is such a model?
We currently are too full to offer tuition seats, but I know that it's a big area of interest, and I think if we are to have the opportunity to expand tuition seats, that would be another area for us to look. We certainly are exploring different opportunities, but right now there's also physical constraints with our actual physical location, but we are also looking at that as a possibility for the future as well.
Thank you. Ethan?
For the budgeting purposes, the reimbursement, are we budgeting a net number or a gross number?
So we're budgeting the revenue against expenditure, so it doesn't stand out as a line of its own. So we are budgeting the net number.
Okay, that's what I want. And I assume the same for the seat that's supposedly going to be sold?
Correct.
Multiple seats. Okay, thank you.
Miriam?
One other question. Where do, any assistance for the ancillary support come into play? Where are those listed? Because I imagine with these numbers, the caseloads also are significant and potentially people would need support.
Do you mean like paraeducators?
Or I was thinking more like, do the OTs have assistants, PTs have assistants who are helping, implement?
So that's a very good question. So occupational therapy, we do have occupational therapy assistants, and their FTEs are coded in with the actual OTs, I believe, correct? Mm-hmm. We do not have any physical therapy assistants. We do have a few speech and language pathology assistants. One of the nice things about having an assistant is they could implement direct services. One of the harder things, and the reason why most of our staff are just OTs or PTs or SLPs, is they are unable to conduct formal evaluations, and they have to have oversight by the occupational therapy. So if I'm an OT and I have an OTA, a CODA, they need oversight hours. So there is a push and pull there between obligations and whether or not it really ends up being a support, because they're not always independent and they require supervision hours. So the occupational therapy therapist who has their caseload then has to find time for supervision of the assistant's caseload and monitoring of their.
Any other questions? All right, we can move on.
Great. Take us to page 9 of our packet, which aligns with E33 and E34 of our board binder. The only change on this page is the difference of 27 FTEs, and that's related to the non-certified support staff. Again, these changes are the result of student needs, and our hope is to remain flat from our current staffing numbers.
So as you might remember, too, this is the second year of implementation of a major change in our administrative structure and pupil services, whereby which now we have a full-time pupil services administrator at all of our school sites, which has had a tremendous positive impact on student-parent family relationships, and also great oversight of support for our special education teams. We've really benefited from the leadership of Kelly Brous as our assistant director. She's done some wonderful things in her leadership, and I'm so appreciative of her. Really, the only change you're going to see here, as Julio mentioned, is in our adult support staffing. That covers our paraeducators, our student aides, our registered behavior technicians. And again, that's all driven by student need. And so what you'll see is there was an increase from our adopted to current. And then we're looking to stay stable at our proposed. But again, that might increase next year.
Thank you. And so as you can see in the salary line, those staffing increases are reflected for those additional positions in adult support. And then in addition, in the operating expenses, that is primarily professional services. And so that relates to services that we might have to pay services for, things like interpreting, inpatient hospital tutoring, things of that nature. And equipment is level funded to support needs.
Thank you. Questions? Ethan?
I missed this before when I was going through it. You had that much of an increase this year over the budget?
In terms of the number of non-certified?
Yeah, 308
Yeah,
to,
I'm glad you're asking that. If you look on page E33, and specifically on line 5185, I believe. Is that right, Barb? Is that where those?
teacher assistants?
Yes, the teacher assistant, the categorization.
Yeah, so what we had, I believe, in the adopted budget, 25-26, where it was reflecting the 272. I don't know if we had the 100% accurate categorization of all of our of a position, which were called parasubs, that were recategorized under their contract negotiation to then reflect. So the bodies were hired and they were categorized elsewhere to reflect the current staffing level. So if you kind of read across that, as I understand it, that salary line 5185 teacher assistants, which is where their payroll lives, you'll see more modest incremental change year over year from 23, 24, 25, reflecting their typical negotiated wage settlement.
Yeah.
So it does look like it's a big jump, but it has more to do with the categorization of the bodies. Now, that being said, there are increases. I don't know if we've teased out exactly how many additional
the
non-certified support staff we may have had.
I don't have an exact number of the total increase other than what's on the budget book in front of me, but I can get those figures if you're looking for
Yeah,
more
we
information.
look at it from the financial analyst, or, I don't remember it being that big, but that's just my memory. But the paraprofessional number's even higher, the increase over the prior budget.
And I do think this is also in reflection of student need. As, you know, as students have the need, then we're staffing for it.
Yeah.
So that's just, again, a reflection of that. And as you see those numbers and enrollment numbers increasing pupil services, there will be a correlation between staffing, especially in adult support staffing in this area.
All right, it's just so large.
And for budgetary purposes, both the increases in the pupil support specialist increase and the paraprofessionals would both be in that paraprofessional categorization line. So those increased positions would both be in there.
Where does this student aid, where does that go? Because that's a big jump of people too. I'm looking at 34 to 33.
So student aides function similar to a paraeducator. They're just hired under a different hiring category.
No, I understand, but I'm
Okay.
saying, I'm trying to figure out which line item they're under for expenses.
That's 5185, and so the
So it's part
teaching.
of teacher assistants?
The teaching assistant, it's an old name, and it'll need to be updated
No,
in
that's
the
fine, I'm
book.
just trying to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, just to get a better picture of it, if we looked on page 16, Barb, for that paraprofessional summary sheet, it provides under pupil services, it's going to provide you, Ethan, some year-over-year figures to give you maybe a more accurate picture of how the actual numbers, but you'd want to be looking specifically at pupil services. And so you see it went up over the last 3 years by about 20, went from 145 to 159, and we're projecting it at 160. I can't read that, at 165 or 66.
I was wondering, I was gonna say this for later, but do we look at per capita, just year over year, students for special needs versus per capita for students under regular instruction? Just to get a
May,
comparable. of what-
rephrase it for me, so I'm
I'm
a
trying to
little slow tonight.
understand where the increases are coming from. So what I'm wondering is, you look at the, in total per capita, which was what Jason referred to. Do we? Per pupil. Yeah, per pupil. I'm sorry, per pupil. Do we also look at, we have a certain number of special needs, the total expense of special needs divided by the number of students?
Oh, I don't know
special-
if we've done that, a per pupil expenditure for special education.
I just think it'd be interesting to look year over year to see where the increase is coming. Is it the number of students or is it the expense per student in total aggregate?
Yeah, no, it could be an interesting, the difficulty is, while I can look at that and be an interesting number, and, what happens obviously within special education is the individualized needs of any given student are assessed during a planning and placement team, and the services that are required, they're a legally mandated piece which are outlined. It's a team decision, and the school has obviously a big role in that decision
I'm not looking to
making.
change the outcome, I'm looking to.
No, I understand. I just don't know that we've looked at it in that way. While it may have some interest from what do we do with that information, because we know we have that legally mandated
I would
requirement.
think it would help, well, it wouldn't help, it might help me. But no, just show where the increases are coming on a relative basis. Was the increase, regular instruction driven, or was it special needs driven, or was it just in
Sure.
general expenses? What?
Increase in what?
Expense per student. All right.
Yeah, I think our effort to do that is by virtue of how we've divided the budget book between sections D and E, so that you can, because section D is your general education budget and your costs, and section E is, really all of the costs related to specialized education. So I think there's an organizational structure that's trying to support that.
No,
Excuse me, Aaron.
I find it helpful to understand where the increases are coming from. But it's more just to understand.
Any other questions? All right. In the home stretch.
All right, and I will take us to page 10, which aligns with pages F2 to F5 of your board binder. And here you'll see a 1.0 reduction, which is the elimination of a currently vacant clerical position in our IT department.
Great. And so salaries reflect that change that Julio mentioned. And then there are a number of other categories within salaries that have adjustments. For instance, you'll note that the deferred compensation appropriation reflects it's increased, and that's due to the benefit that new employees receive, which would put them in the hybrid pension plan. And so that's for non-certified staff. And so you'll be seeing that in that line, and we should see an inverse relationship ultimately under pension. And then similarly, when we look at, and on the next page, there's a very detailed list of all of these changes. And then there's other changes, including, teacher substitutes, consistent with anticipated fill rate and need for when teachers are also on longer-term leave, and also for the short-term substitutes as it relates to minimum wage changes to inform our daily rate. When we look at benefits, which is our biggest driver, we've talked a lot about the health and medical insurance. The budget estimates a 12.5 premium increase and anticipated staff participation, as we did see a little bit of fluctuation compared to what we budgeted in how many employees were participating and in which categories. And then You can kind of go down the line, changes to our disability insurance or anticipated costs, group life insurance based on the benefits received and the anticipated costs for those. Social Security follows the payroll. And then, as I mentioned, we did see a decrease in our share of the actuarially determined employer contribution to the pension plan. And so we make those contributions at the town's instruction, consistent with those folks that are not in TRB, the teacher's retirement pension plan. And then in operating, you see some of the other things that we've talked about that are material in nature. So for instance, our utilities and the fluctuation that we see there resulted with anticipated heating increases and usage. Our transportation budget, which is the biggest driver there, and so that's looking at our contractual increases, and then also what we're seeing for route need for both in-district and out-of-district. And other changes include a favorable variance in our workers' compensation, property, and liability insurance allocation from the town. And so those are other insurances that they manage, and because they are the property owners. And so they let us know what those rates are set at. And that's based on experience, employees, risk of positions, things of that nature. So they give us that calculation. And then there are a variety of other accounts. I'm happy to answer any questions, but there's also just some routine contracted service increases. And then equipment related to our anticipated technology device replacement program.
John?
So I have a question on the utilities line, which I guess we're all sort of grimacing here. I think the exact opposite of our reactions to the tuition seats. But it is so. I know that since Paul published published the original budget to us, there's certainly been some geopolitical changes, to put it mildly. Is this going to be revised further, or how does that process work?
As it relates to utilities, we are in communication with our energy specialist, and so she is a part-time employee shared by the town and the board, and so she really works with energy brokers to determine where she thinks our rates are going to be, where she thinks rates are going. She also, will provide additional information, for instance, if she thinks we might see a savings from some virtual net metering related to solar farms that we participate in, things of the like. So I'll definitely be in touch with her this month to discuss that further.
Ethan?
The healthcare, do we have a stopgap type of loss ability with?
We don't, because the liability for those catastrophic claims are on the state partnership plan. If we were self-insured, we would need that stopgap insurance, but we're paying on a per capita rate on the employee regardless.
So it's just per capita?
Yes.
So, and it's based on the entire state, or is it based on?
They actually set the rates based on county. And so Hartford County is, so Talon County has the lowest rates and Hartford County has the second lowest rates.
Okay, but I would just think with the size of the pool, I'm surprised it has that much of a fluctuation.
The fluctuation is based on the claims experience that they're seeing. And so they actually publish a report, and you can, see what their claims paid out and their pharmacy claims and things of that nature. For us, we did take a look to see as a percent of the premium we're paying, what are the claims we're seeing. And in the last 5 years, you've seen years where we had more claims than premiums paid. And then you see years that it's the opposite. But over a 5-year average, we see that the claims that were paid on our employees' behalf totaled 98% of the premiums we paid.
Okay, but so this year's increase, is it a function of catch-up from last year, or is it a function of what they anticipate based on what they're seeing?
So it's a combination. In the current year, we made assumptions based on employee participation, and we did see a little bit of additional participation, but where we saw fluctuation was we saw less participation. And these are not huge amounts, but less in the individual category and a shift in those new signups to family. So some of that is driving it, but the much far and away bigger percent is related to the rate change, and we're getting new information from the state partnership plan, and hope to have more specific news and updates for you on
Okay,
that.
so then I guess I misunderstood. I assumed the increase came from what they were charging per individual, realizing there's a difference between families and individuals. But is
So they had a aggregate change of 12.5% to their overall, and that's the major driver of it. The secondary driver, Barb was just saying, is our plan participation has seen shifts to a greater number of folks in the family plan. So the increases across this line are, number one, it's the 12.5% increase in the state partnership plan. Number two, I think it's the family stuff. And then number three, when you take the positions, like the 6 elementary positions that we added to the budget, we also have to here add their contributions to this. So those three things are the three biggest drivers. I would just want to share, as Barb just said, we have ongoing communication with the state partnership. They continue to provide us with updated cost projections, and it was announced last night at the town council meeting that the town received, the same notice that we received, that they have an updated cost projection, which should provide us some savings. So once that conversation has matured a little bit and we've been able to do the analysis on it, we'll probably share that information with you, should you have the interest to lower the budget by that amount.
well, yeah, I can know my answer.
Just a
But-
thought.
No, it's just, it seemed like a very high number, very high.
It is, and I think, I can't remember, I was talking to someone on the way in, the cost of insurance across the state, we're seeing this as a very common and significant trend. I'm aware of self-insured, districts that are self-insured that are having 20%, 30% increases in this line. We are fortunate, as Barb said, in Hartford County, our rate is a significant increase. However, in other, we're the second lowest in the state partnership pool. And there are districts that are, other places geographically that are having even higher increases through the state partnership plan.
So is the 12% a function of what they anticipate, what already happened, plus what they anticipate, or is it?
Yeah, I think that's what Barb was saying. It's a combination of the experience with claims, so what they're seeing, how much they have to pay out, but also they're trying to, I think, build their reserves.
Yeah.
So it's twofold.
All right. Separate question, unrelated. Transportation, I think at the previous meeting, we had asked for a breakout of how much transportation was due to out-of-district tuition versus how much was due to just cost decrease of.
Yes, sorry, I
Transportation.
should have mentioned that. So in our transportation breakout, 70% of our transportation costs relate to in-district transport, and 30% relates to out-of-district transport.
In the fluctuation, or the increase was all,
So it's a combination of things. So we do have rate increases in our contracts with our two bus companies, the one that provides in-district and out-of-district, and then in addition, trends that we're seeing as it relates to out-of-district routes, because that is a little bit more variable, right? Because we need different vehicle types depending on the student's need. They may need a monitor, they may not. And so that projection is based on a combination of rates, but also the trends we're seeing, depending on the schools attended, the number of days of schools. So there's a little bit more fluctuation as it relates to the out-of-district transport.
okay, I was hoping to get like an understanding of the out-of-district went up this amount, the in-district went up this. If you don't have it, you don't have it. But
Sure. I do have it here. I just don't have, I would have to calculate. It's not broken out by out-of-district and in-district here, but I can get that for
if you
you.
could, that'd be great. Thank you.
Can I add?
Can I piggyback one thing? I want to, there's the one good news story that lives in there despite the increase. I was talking with Melissa today. She was sharing about efforts that we're taking that are ongoing to keep our costs contained as it relates to out-of-district transportation. You were talking about some ride share. Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is something we're monitoring for a number of reasons. Of course, when our students are traveling to a school that might be in the state of Connecticut but still far away, we are looking to rideshare, and so we have a couple of partnerships with area towns actively, but we are seeking to do that more often. And other towns are seeking to do that as well, where they're reaching out to us to ask us if we have a route that might be going their way, heading to a school in that direction. And so we have partnered with them, and that does offset some of the cost. And so we'll continue to explore that as an option.
I was just going to ask a question about transportation because we're seeing this as a huge pain point everywhere across the state and I'm sure across the country. And it seems like those prices, like we hire buses all the time and they are growing exponentially by like the month in terms of charges. Is there any discussion about how to regulate that better at a statewide level? It's clearly not as big a number as the outplacement discussion, but it's just keeps ballooning, and I feel like something's got to break at a certain point.
Yeah, great question, and we are seeing this across the state. The state did put in the legislative session, talked about regionalizing the transportation efforts, and so I haven't heard more about that other than I know the legislative session and the work that they did around out of districts and out of district costs. They looked at a lot of different factors, and transportation was one of them, and they do want to look at regionalizing. I haven't heard more about what that might look like or how that might be rolled out, but I'm looking forward to that. I think it would be helpful for a lot of us in a district because we're often transporting in the same direction, but we might not know. So more to come on that, but I do know it's a focus at the state.
Hey, Jennifer?
I've been so excited to ask this question. I have a question about trash. So I'm wondering, I guess, if I was trying to look in here, but I was not able to find an answer. Does the district pay? I mean, do schools pay separately for trash, or does the town kind of like take care of that? How does that play out? And the reason I'm asking is because of some of the composting programs.
So the waste is part of the town budget.
Okay. Because from what I understand from the town, and I know there's a whole composting ongoing discussion that's just smoothly moving along. But at least in Whiting Lane, where my kids go to school, they've started composting, and I think maybe other schools too. And it's my understanding that trash, like the food waste, is like the heaviest part, the most expensive part of trash. And so I was just intrigued, like if we can roll this out in other schools, the composting piece, and theoretically reduce the trash load from the schools, if there would be any potential cost savings there that we could then, put somewhere else.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I know that we've looked at that at various schools, and in fact, I know, when I was principal of Conard, we actually piloted a whole thing, did videos and all that, and unfortunately, we just didn't see the success we were hoping for with the students. And so, in some of the conversations I've had with, some of the people that are really taking this on and passionate about it, is their belief now is to really start that at the elementary school and sort of just make it like, hey, it's what kids do. And so when you get to the high school level, there's no change. That's just what you've always done. And so I think that's been a real strategic sort of shift in their mindset, because I think
I can't imagine training a high school student to do that.
well,
No
the video,
offense to the high school students.
No, the video was outstanding that we
I'm
created.
sure the video was great. I'm sure the video was great. I have to tell you, the elementary school kids picked it up right away. So I do think there probably is something to that.
Yeah, and so that's really where the efforts are focused now, is taking a look at a couple of the elementary schools, really starting to do that, really see that the kids have embraced that. They're excited about it. There's a piece of, doing good for my community, and it aligns well with our vision of the graduate and all the other pieces that are in there. And so the hope is that as they continue that and sort of that, branches out, that we'll start to see that growth, and so that eventually it'll transition to all schools, including our secondary and high schools.
Thank you.
LaToya?
To add to that, if you need a high schooler, my daughter is very passionate about composting. She actually did the commercial for the town. She's really, really passionate about composting and like the environment in general, so maybe we can use her.
I'll make sure I write that down. I know Teresa also has a real passion in starring in a video related to that, so.
Miriam?
I'm just curious about the information technology line on page 10, looking at 15.5 positions. Is that the entire department? What does that include? Or who does that include where, potentially? Is that impact in school? It's on page 10 of our packet.
So there is a breakout of all of the IT staff, and it is on page, on F21, you can see, the IT staff breakout there.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other final remarks or closing comments? Oh, Jennifer?
I may have missed it. Did we go over pre-K already? Or is that not part of this? We did. I missed it. Great. I'm sure it's fantastic. I'll catch up. Thank you.
I just want to so there were a lot of comments that I took down, and programmatic ideas, but just relative to, excuse me, just relative to data requests, just to make sure I have my notes. I'm going to look at coming back to you with some quest enrollment numbers. I'm going to look at coming back to you with a dollar value for the assessment platforms related to mandatory universal screening. I'm going to look at coming back to you for our special education trends from our performance and profile reports. You were wanting to know about kind of how kids broke out from complexity. And then I just heard that additional question about the percentage increase for transportation broken out by in-district transportation versus out-of-district transportation. I may have missed something. I know there were other ideas and things that were talked about, but those were like hard numbers that you guys were looking for. So if I missed anything, please let me know.
Just generally, we're not seeing much by way of email communication or anything from the public on the budget yet, are we?
Thank you. So there have been a limited number, and I will be working to, I imagine tonight will generate more. That's generally the pattern I've seen. There was an email that was sent jointly to the town and to ours that really the majority of the questions were geared toward the town, but I will be looking to send you probably every couple of days a summary. But as of right now, not too many. I think the total number was 3. One of the other ones had to do with a question just on class size and looking at those enrollments, but I'll make sure that you have the full picture of all those emails.
I was just going to mention, I know there is the community sessions coming up, and that's what you were going to talk about, so I won't do it.
I was just going to say for different ways or mechanisms by which people can give feedback, just a reminder of what the email address is first off.
Yes, so the email is budget@whps.org as a general email for any budget inquiries. And then we do have those 3 community conversations. The first one is on Monday, March the 16th. I believe that one is at the Senior Center, and that is the afternoon session, 2 to 4. And then that Wednesday, the 18th, from 6 to 8. And is that one at the Faxon Library? And then the last one is on that following Monday, the 23rd, from 6 to 8 again, and that will be at right here in the center at Noah Webster. Any
other comments, questions? All right. Well, thank you all for your incredible diligence and hard work in this. I know that this is not easy. Yeah, can we just give a round of applause? And I said this the last couple of years, but just because of the work I do across the state in the K-12 system, we see a lot of different districts present a lot of different budget information, and there is no district that I have come across that does it with such transparency and competency and ability to find all the things in all the details. So thank you so much for that. And we're really looking forward to the Part 2 workshop on the 25th, where we will have also a public hearing, another opportunity for the public to give input and for us to go further on any questions that we all might have or that may have come up through a comment that we've received from the public. So it will continue, but we are just really grateful for all that you've done and for the time you've spent with us tonight. So thank you.
If, through you, Madam Chairperson, if you would entertain a motion for adjournment?
Seeking a motion to adjourn? Second? Second. Thank you, Miriam. Meeting adjourned at 9:45 p.m.